Welcome to the Jadario White Show, where we dive deep into real stories, real struggles, and real triumphs. I'm your host, Jadario White, and today we have a powerful, inspiring conversation ahead of us. Joining me is Coco Ratliff, a resilient woman who has faced unimaginable challenges, including surviving childhood abuse, becoming a mother at just 14 years old, and navigating the complexities of a custody battle as an adult. Coco's story is one of courage, strength, transformation, and today she is here to share her journey and inspire others who may be going through the same and similar experiences. Today we'll explore her past, her fight, her childhood, and the wisdom she gained along the way. So get comfortable, open your hearts, and we will be right back with this incredible story. She was born in the 90s, but her lifestyle reflected someone who was born in the 1940s. Here to explain more of her unique childhood is Coco Ratliff. Welcome to the show, Coco.
Thank you, Jadario.
All right, you're welcome. So I have a couple questions for you. All right, so during your childhood and early trauma, how did you get through it?
So as early as I can remember from childhood is about 5 years old. Mm-hmm. So through that trauma, I don't remember having a life that didn't include trauma. Okay. So when I grew up, I lived in Pageland, South Carolina, navigated to a place called Ruby, South Carolina, was where the other side of my family lived. Inside that house, we did not have running water, a working toilet, or even lights. So a lot of what we did was, my mom was, I say, an innovator. We had a kerosene heater for heating. So she used to cook on a kerosene heater for food. So we used it, for heating and also for food. We used to go to a family member's house with jugs to fill up with water. And then kind of with lights, it was more like candles and different things like that. So that's kind of what my early childhood consisted of, living through that, on top of, having a father that was in the house that had a drug addiction.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
And an alcohol addiction, which led to abuse, with the family. He was more abusive to my mom than us, but he was more verbally abusive and just not showing up like, you think a dad would be able to show up for a kid.
Around what age did you experience this? Well, how old were you?
As early as I can remember, from 5 to on up until I was about 13 years old.
Oh, wow. And how did you feel about it?
Honestly, I was embarrassed, but as a child, sometimes you don't realize that you are actually feeling embarrassment, especially if your dad is a certain type of way and you have children in school and, especially living in a certain type of neighborhood, and people know that your dad is on drugs and you get picked at from going to school, that you have a parent that is, having a substance abuse, which as adults, we know that substance abuse is a medical condition.
Right.
But for children, they don't see it like that because their mental capacities is just like, hey, your dad's on drugs, ha. So growing up, I had that big insecurity that people knew things about me which they would judge me for, which was like my family dynamic.
Yeah, so I totally understand that, because I kind of had come from a dramatic childhood as well. So I kind of I do understand where you're coming from. And that can be quite hard because as kids, you try to appease everyone. You try to be this perfect individual, but for someone to know something so devastating about you, it can cause insecurity, and with that insecurity, did you kind of carry that on through life or as you got older?
Yes. So when you have different insecurities, especially when you don't know how to call them by name, they carry on with you, even with relationships. So I'm an advocate for saying that how you are with your parents and how your parents are with you are things that can carry you throughout life, and how you build the foundation of relationships with other people. Because unfortunately, if you don't have that groundwork to tell you how you should communicate or how you should navigate through hard times, you don't really have the framework of how to deal with it as older that you become. And that's kind of what was my situation, which led me to get into situations that I was in, is because of my childhood trauma that I didn't know to even call it by name. I didn't know what type of healing I need. I didn't even know that I needed healing. I just thought it was normal.
Yeah, and that's the thing, when when you hurting, you try to find crutches, you know, and like you said, your crutch was love. You was trying to find love in the wrong places. Around what age were you when you went through the most dramatic change in your life? Or what was the situation?
My mom, she made a decision that she had enough of the abuse, so she decided to move to Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Okay.
So she met a local pastor there that actually helped to navigate us there, and we went into the Pilgrim's Inn shelter for women and children. And that was a hard transition somewhat, just to be in that part of South Carolina all your life, and now you're moving to a completely different place. The speed is different in Rock Hill from Pageland, so it was just a lot of navigating to get used to. And
to touch on what you were saying earlier, not mean to cut you off, but when you said the Pilgrim Home, was that like a facility where if you didn't have anywhere to go, it was just a bunch of people on like cots or something?
No, so the Pilgrim's Inn is actually a program in Rock Hill, South Carolina, that they have different avenues. So they have a shelter for women and children. So in the shelter, a room could consist of maybe 4 bunk beds or something like that. But just depending on the situation, a family can actually be in a room themselves, and that's kind of what our situation was. They also had apartments as well, maybe like a transition home for if you are making enough income that you can pay a certain wage to be in the apartment living until you get on your feet, that you can get out back into the real world. They also have food drives and all of that they have in a daycare center as well, to help women get on their feet to try to be better, that they're not in that situation.
Yeah, so I know sometimes in that situation, how did it make you feel? I know, were you confused? Even though you knew about the abuse, did you miss your father, or, did the abuse continue because you might have been around certain other kids that experienced the same thing and they beating on you as a kid? You get what I'm saying? Did you experience anything like that, or, how did it make you feel too?
So for me, I was happy. So most of the time in my life, I was younger, but my mind has always been very developed to know different things that just wasn't right. So for a long time, I just used to ask my mom, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just get away from him? I don't understand. So as a child, I didn't understand how sometimes love is that it's hard to break those strings when you're in love with somebody and went through a lot. Only thing that I was able to reason as a child was, he's hurting you, leave. But my brothers were a little bit different because they had a softer space in their heart for my dad. But the way I viewed it is, every time he did something and he came back, he apologized and said he would change, he never changed. So it was I was getting re-hurt over and over again. And the older I got, I just kind of got tired of the promises and him never doing what he said he was gonna do.
I'm glad you touched on that. Now, with your father, like you say, the boys were different. As boys, we look up to our fathers. I got a father as well, and whatever come out of his mouth, I hold on to every word. You know what I mean? So I understand that part. And I have sisters, and they was a lot like you. No, you know what I mean? They didn't understand it either. So with you not growing up with your father, separating into adulthood, did that affect you? With dating and relationships?
Yes. I will say this, and I know it's cliche, because there's a study that comes out that says that women, we process more emotional and men process more logical. So growing up and not having that emotional stability and that emotional reassurance that a father needs to give to a daughter can make her grow and develop to seek different relationships. That emotional part that secured her, she's insecure emotionally going into a relationship. And it could be somebody that is not good for her, but she does not know that because she never received that security beforehand. So that's kind of what I experienced.
And psychologically, you pretty much got someone just like your dad.
Correct.
Yeah, because that's what you grew up seeing. So like you said, you didn't know how to reflect or, pick and choose, or you didn't know any better. So we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be back with more Coco Ratliff. Welcome back. She had a tremendous fight from her childhood years to adulthood. With us again to give the details on how she made it through those difficult times is Coco Ratliff. Welcome back. So as you moved into your adulthood and being pregnant at 14 and then going to a custody battle, how was that?
So as we talked about before, just not having that emotional and psychological assurance younger, I picked wrong necessarily and got into situations that I felt that was safe to give me something that I was missing. But being that I was a child, I didn't understand what exactly I was missing from what I needed. So I became friends with someone and ended up getting pregnant at 14. And while I was pregnant at 14, I also knew somebody else from our neighborhood, a gentleman from the neighborhood, and he had been checking on me since I was like 13. So I thought he was providing like reassurance, you know, how like you would want a male adult to like, hey, check on you, how sports. Like he used to come to my basketball games because I used to play basketball. So when I got pregnant with my daughter, and me and my daughter's dad were not on solid terms for a lot of things because I didn't understand that he had his own things that he was dealing with. He was young, I was young, and so we made adult decisions and had different expectations, and through my trauma, I didn't know how to navigate that, and then being pregnant, and my daughter's dad went to the military, so I definitely felt alone. So at that time...
And where was your mom in between that?
Okay.
Mom and dad and stuff.
So my dad was still battling with his drug and alcohol addiction, so he will pop up and pop out.
Okay.
My mom, because she did not have a formal high school education, she had to kind of take jobs that she could get. So at the time she was working about 3 different jobs to try to provide for me and my brothers, and the fact that we were in sports and having to pay all of these different costs and AAU for my brother, so she worked a lot to try to not have us go back to a situation where we didn't have lights, where we didn't have water, because she didn't want that lifestyle for us.
Understood. Okay. And I heard you say he used to come to your games. How old was this guy?
So when I was 14, he was 40.
Oh, wow, 40? And that was a big jump, fam.
It definitely was.
Jump. Yeah, so within that, how, I know when guys are older, did he try to treat you like you was his child, or, you know, did he do mental abuse or physical abuse? How was that being in that type of situation?
So in that situation, again, reflects back to when you are a child and you're missing certain things, especially as a female child, that you would get certain things from the dad. Because I went through a lot of abandonment issues that I didn't know that they were abandonment issues with my dad, always saying he was going to show up, and he never changed. And then being pregnant, and then my daughter's dad went away to the military, and it's like he wasn't showing up for me.
Yes.
So it became like the males that I cared about in my life wasn't showing up, and then this older man coming to my basketball games, seeing me in the neighborhood, having conversations about how I'm doing. To me, at that age, it provided a sense of security and care. So when things started to advance, when I was 14, I felt safe. Like for the first time in my life, somebody was showing up for me, a male figure was showing up for me the way I always wanted people to show up for me that I cared about. So he provided a sense of, I'm not leaving you, you don't deserve this, you don't deserve to be treated like that. So it's things that I had already affirmed within myself that I didn't deserve to be treated like that. He reassured me in ways that my dad didn't reassure me. So it was easy for me to feel like it was safe.
Okay, makes sense. Is this the guy that's doing the custody battle? You doing the custody battle?
Correct.
How's that? What's giving you the strength to keep going and go through your normal day of activities with, you know, all this going on? So
when about 14, I had my daughter. Then about 17, I had my son with him.
Okay.
I ended up being with him for 14 years. And we were married when I was about 18 or 19.
Okay.
So within the process, I had people telling me, you know, as I got older, like, Coco, something seems off. But I was so to the point, I'm not gonna say brainwashed, but you could say brainwashed to think that it was okay. I thought it was normal because he acted like he cared about me. Even through the process of the mental and emotional abuse, I told a story that every year for my birthday, I cried every year for my birthday until I turned age 28.
Oh, wow. Why? Like, that's sad.
So he had a thing where I could never be happy.
Right.
So unless he was the one that provided that happiness or substance to me, he would always do something to ruin everything.
Can you give me an example of that?
Yes. So when I graduated nursing school, so
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I went to nursing school. So I went to nursing school at like 18, 19. When I graduated nursing school, I had a big party at my house. And so my family came, and my family also invited like some of their family from their other side. So it was some guys that came. And so he was like yelling at me like, well, did you not know that these guys was coming? I was like, no, you know, I didn't know, like, you know, just kind of explaining, but that wasn't good enough. So I knew that like he was trying to ruin it. So I tried to go around it to try to still be happy because my family was there. So later on that night, we had a DJ. He shut the DJ down, told the DJ to tell everybody to leave. And he pulled out like a weapon and like waved it in the air and was like, if everybody don't leave, I'm gonna start shooting in the air. So, you know,
that's very traumatizing.
Right. So he used to assert of fear to try to make sure that I was in line. So essentially it was almost like having the father that I did not have, but also in a lover to keep me in line. So a parent will rear the children.
Yes.
That's kind of how the situation was with me. I got reared into doing whatever he wanted me to do so that I wouldn't go astray. And another thing that I realized as I was getting therapy too, because I had to seek therapy. So when I hit about age 25, I knew that I needed to get away. I didn't know what happened. It's like I woke up one day and the lights came on and I was just like, I have to get away from him. Some things happened that kept me another 2 years being with him because I felt like at that time when things developed that I couldn't leave. But then it got bad again. It started just getting worse and I was like, I have no choice, like I have to go. So in the process when I did leave.
And how did you rediscover yourself, like within them times? Like what did you do?
So I started going to the gym, I started working out. I started connecting back with my family because I was isolated from my family. He didn't want me to be around my brothers. He didn't want the children to have any exposure to my family, to my brothers. So me and my children, he became all we knew. So a lot of times, different behaviors that other people could point out to let me know wasn't right, I didn't see it because I was so isolated with him. So I worked, went to school, came home. That was my sense. I couldn't go out to be with friends. I couldn't have friends. So I was just stuck in this place. So that's why a lot of times once I got out of the situation and I started going places with my brother, a lot of people used to ask me, did I move? I never moved. I stayed in Rock Hill the whole time, but people just didn't see me.
Well, Coco, sorry that we had to cut you off, but this is all the time we have for this segment. We'll be right back with Coco Ratliff. Her story has been one of extreme trauma and amazing strength. Here once again to tell us more about how she is reaping the benefits of her fight, here is Coco Ratliff. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I know we got cut off earlier, and I wanted to touch bases on the custody battle. So how's that going?
So what led up to the custody battle is when I got to the point where I knew that I had to leave no matter what, I took my children and I left the house. It got to the point where it became dangerous. He was carrying a weapon around, threatening, so I left. So leading up to that, I wanted to get a divorce, but you have to wait for a year, so I tried to do that, but he served me papers and basically said that I just took the children away from him. He didn't know why I left. It was just, he never did anything to me. He never did anything to the children. So it was just like this whole story. So we ended up going into a custody battle because he was saying that I was restricting the children from being with him, which wasn't true. Some things happened, which I'm not going to expound upon right now, that kept them from wanting to have a relationship with him. And because of that, we ended up going into a deep dive custody battle so bad that my children were taken away from me for 8 months in
I'm sorry to hear
DSS
that.
custody. And I didn't even have a traffic ticket or anything, you know, not addicted to drugs. There was no reason for it to happen. The judge issued it based off of
What he said.
based off of what he said, and a lie said that I tried to fight his mom. But I had a video evidence that I didn't even get close to her, but the judge wouldn't even look at the video at all.
Oh, wow.
So my children were removed and put into a group home. I didn't even know where my children were for about 2 months. So even in that process, he just kept stating that I didn't deserve my children and to leave them in DSS custody.
Excuse me, you said 2 months?
I didn't know what they were for 2 months.
Yeah, how did you feel within it, not seeing your kids waking up to them and, you know, being able to touch them, to not doing that anymore?
It was very hard because the earlier part of my development, I was 14 when I was still developing. I had my first child, so I never went longer than 2 to 3 days without having or seeing or touching my children. So I had to navigate through that process to try to figure out what can I do. But through that process, I learned that this was the first time in my life where I had the ability to not hold on to the fact that my children were gone, because I know I didn't do anything at all. So DSS even told me that I didn't have a process to work towards to get them back because I never did anything. So they never experienced this before in their system. So they didn't even know what to do because this was issued by a judge and not by DSS. So DSS didn't even know how to help me get my children back. Wow. So I just sat, and I have strong faith in God, and I kind of started working the process and believing that my story will have to be told to help encourage other people. So I needed to sit in the process. I needed to grow. I needed to learn how to heal, even though my children was not with me. But for the first time in my life as an adult, I can start to make decisions for myself to work through the trauma that I experienced even as a child growing up, so that when I got my children back with me, that I knew how to help them.
Coco, thank you for coming on the show. I really do appreciate you. What you went through is very impactful and empowering. Is there something that you would like to tell anyone that's going through or have went through the same struggles you have been through? Yes.
My biggest thing that has helped me is to understand everything you go in life is just part of the process. Unfortunately, with the process, we can't speed it up. We can't make it go slower. We have no control of that. The only thing you have control of is what's going on in the present time. It's very important to find yourself. If you are a young, especially a young adult female, and then you have experienced something as a child, I would advise you to try to unpack those things as early as you can, because what you don't want to do is try to unpack things in your 30s, which is what I had to do, close to 30, from childhood, then my 20s, and then stuff that happened in my 30s. So as much as you can unpack earlier, to try not to lead to get yourself in bad relationships and not knowing how to control yourself emotionally, that it's better to try to fix those things, get help, seek therapy, whatever you got to do to try to get yourself back to a grounded space where that you can make conscious decisions for yourself and your children and the people around you.
Oh, that's great. And how can they find you?
You can look me up on Instagram and Facebook, also TikTok. My name is Coco Ratliff, aka Sips with Coco. That is satisfying intellectual pleasures, because we want to find pleasures and find an intellect with our mind.
Love it. Say thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate that. That's all the time we have for today's show. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you have any comments or suggestions or would like to be a guest, please contact me at jadariowhiteshow@gmail.com. I would like to once again thank my amazing guest, Coco Ratliff. And until next time, thank you for watching the Jadario White Show.